Welcome to the Vhdl Design and Modeling of Digital Systems course, Procedures. Here's the syntax for a procedure declaration. The keyword procedure followed by procedure name, followed by an optional parameter interface list. If it's there, there's a set of parentheses that surround it. Space is, and then we can have a subprogram declarative part. Now everything that's declared in that part is local strictly to the procedure itself. We could have variables and constants and other things declared there. And then we have a begin, and then one or more sequential statements. One sequential statement that we have in subprograms that we do not have in, say, processes is the return statement. The procedure declaration can include a sequential statement that's a return statement that so that we can return from the procedure in the middle of the procedure rather than hitting the end of the procedure, which will do an automatic return. The rest of the syntax is end, procedure, and then procedure name. The parameter interface list in the procedure declaration begins with a parenthesis and then either signal or constant or variable, followed by one or more identifiers or identifier names, colon, and then mode, and mode can be either in or out or in-out. A subtype declaration or subtype indication, such as an integer, a bit, a boolean, whatever. Also, we can optionally initialize each of these to a static expression, and we can do one or more types, signals, constants, or variables in the parameter interface list. Now, something else I want to point out here as well is that part of the advantage of a procedure over and above a function is that a procedure can have inputs, multiple inputs, and multiple outputs, whereas a function can have inputs and return an output, but a single output. And we'll get to that in a minute. Here's an example of a procedure declaration called average samples. Now notice that we're not passing anything in or out of this procedure. There's a local variable called total of type real, and it's initialized to 0.0. And then begin. The first thing we do is we check to see if samples, the length of it, is greater than 0. If it's not, then severity failure. Otherwise, we continue. And then we do a for loop for index in samples over the range, and we increment total by samples index, and then we return or we set average to total and divided by the number of samples that we scan through. Here's another example of a procedure. Add U, ostensibly unsigned, where we're basically adding A and B, which are inputs to our procedure, and they are of type word32, which is a data type defined elsewhere. The result is out word32, and there's another output of a type boolean called overflow. A couple local variables for which to do our unsigned add, and then a for loop that basically scans through in reverse order the bits and performs a ANDing function. It calculates the sum and also determines if there's a carry. Also, if the carry is still set to a 1 at the end, then we've obviously overflowed. But I want to point out here that this procedure does have a parameter list. It has multiple inputs and multiple outputs. Once we have our procedures declared, we can also perform calls. We can call the procedure average samples, and we can call ADDU with multiple inputs, PC, adding the value of 4 hex. The result goes into next PC, and we have an overflow flag as well. A few things in general I want to say about subprograms. Subprogram overloading is used to implement different subprograms that have the same name but are passed different data types or different parameters. A subprogram is visible from the end of the subprogram declaration to the end of the corresponding statement part. Also, a subprogram may have 0 or more parameters, as we've seen. Also, all parameters defined in a subprogram need not have a corresponding association during the subprogram call. In the two examples here, there's only the second one has parameters being passed to it. We're also passing those parameters on a positional basis. We could also have used named association when passing parameters to a procedure.